The first notice was slapped onto my mailbox with duct tape, like some low-budget ransom note. Bold red ink screamed, "Urgent HOA violation. Subject to EVY tie-in." But here's the kicker, there was no HOA. Not a real one. Anyway, my name's Ethan Harper, a contractor who doesn't fall for nonsense. When I bought my house 2 years ago in Willow Creek, I dug through every dusty file at City Hall to make sure no HOA existed. The neighborhood tried forming one back in the 90s, but it crashed and burned before it could get off the ground. Then came this letter, signed by the so-called president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, Deborah Mitchell. She was in her late 50s with a sharp blonde bob and a VY sore she wore like a crown, even indoors. The next morning, there she was, standing on my lawn like she owned the place, clipboard in hand. "You're in violation, Mr. Harper," she said, adjusting her cheap sunglasses. "Your work truck's parked out front overnight. Against the rules." I glanced at my truck, sitting on my curb on my property. "What rules?" I asked, arms crossed. "The HOA guidelines, page 12, she snapped. "No commercial vehicles after 9 p.m. I almost laughed. "There's no HOA here." Her smile was so tight, it could have cracked glass. "We voted last month. The community reinstated it. Retroactively." I shook my head. "That's not how it works." She scribbled something on her clipboard, sniffed, and said, "You'll be fined due law 100 a day until it's resolved. If you don't comply, we'll start EVY tie-in proceedings." I did laugh then. Try it. 2 weeks later, a certified letter arrived and EVY tie-in notice, complete with a flimsy document sporting a fake-looking HOA header and Deborah's signature, stamped like she thought that made it legit. The woman had nerve, I'll give her that, but 0 cents. I could have called a lawyer, but I want to see how far she'd take this. So I waited. I set up security cameras, saved every notice, recorded every word. Deborah and her crew of middle-aged busybodies didn't slow down. They escalated fines, threats, even a petition with forged signatures from neighbors who later swore they'd never signed anything. One neighbor, a retired Navy vet named Tom, told me Deborah's gang was trying to push out anyone who didn't fit their VY shown. I asked what that meant. "People who don't bow down," he said, eyes narrowing. Then I learned where they ran their little operation. A rented office in a strip mall 2 blocks away, with a tacky sign reading Willow Creek HOA Administrative Office. I knew the landlord built his calf-face deck last year. I gave him a call. The office lease? Month to month, dirt cheap. Was the building for sale? It was. I closed the deal in a week, paid cash through my LLC, Harper Builds, and the landlord even tossed in the gravel lot out back. I didn't care about the lot. What mattered was that I now owned the building where Deborah ran her fake empire. I kept it quiet, waiting to see how much deeper they'd dig their hole. They dug deep. 3 nights after I bought the place, I came home to a dented mailbox and a shattered porch light. Nothing stolen, just petty vandalism. The cops came, but without proof, they couldn't do much. My street-facing camera had been spray-painted over, but they missed the one above my garage. It caught everything. A guy in a zip-up jacket with a Willow Creek patch on the sleeve, smashing my mailbox. I knew him, Larry Tate, Deborah's self-proclaimed VYC president, a guy who owned 2 houses on the block and wore wraparound sunglasses even at night. The next morning, I took the footage to the police, along with a folder stuffed with forged EVY tie-in notices and fake fines. Some documents even had what looked like City Seal's big mistake. By noon, Detective Sarah Kim was in my VYing room, flipping through my EVY denke. "You've got a paper trail here," she said, tapping the forged signatures. "Did these neighbors report this?" I nodded. 2 tried. Deborah told them they were bound by the HOA, like it or not. Sarah checked her notes. "There's no HOA filed with the county." I leaned back. "Guess where they run this scam from?" She raised an eyebrow. "I own it now. Bought last week. Haven't told them." Sarah gave a slow nod, like she was already piecing together a plan. "Let's keep it that way." That night, I changed the locks on the building, had my crew install a keypad and an alarm, and slapped a sign on the door, "Commercial lease available. Contact Harper Builds." The next morning, I parked across the street in my truck and waited. Deborah rolled up in a silver SUV with a handwritten, reserved for HOA president sign taped to the dashboard. Larry showed up with a pastry box and a jug of creamer, like it was just another day at the office. They froze when they saw the sign. Deborah yanked at the door. Nothing. I waited until Larry pulled out his phone, then strolled over. "Looking for the key?" I asked. Deborah spun around, face red. "What did you do?" "Bought the building," I said. "Lease is up. You're trespassing." "You can't do that," she shrieked. "I can. I did. And I'm jacking up the rent." Larry stepped forward, chest puffed. "You're interfering with a certified neighborhood association." I smirked. "No, I'm shutting down a scam. You're not registered. You forged documents. You vandalized my property." Deborah's jaw clenched. "You have no proof." I held up my phone. The video of Larry queued up. I didn't play it, just let her see the thumbnail. She went pale. Then Sarah pulled up, badge around her neck. "Deborah Mitchell?" she asked. "I'm Detective Kim. We need to talk about forged documents and fake city seals." Larry backed away, but Sarah wasn't VYing it. "Larry Tate, you're coming too." "I didn't do anything," he stammered. "You're on video," I said. Spray paint and all. They tried to argue, but Sarah shut them down. As Deborah was led to the car, she shot me a look like this was personal. Maybe it was. That afternoon, I walked through their office. It was a mess, stacks of violation notices, pre-filled fine forms, envelopes labeled with house numbers. A corkboard on the wall had a neighborhood map with color-coded pins. My house had 3 red ones jabbed into it. I boxed it all up for Sarah. She said the DA was looking at fraud, impersonation, and conspiracy. Deborah's crew had targeted others, too. An elderly couple down the street had wired $1,000 to a Willow Creek CIVYC fund, account Deborah controlled. The account was drained, but the paper trail was damning. Within a week, the fake HOA fell apart. Neighbors started knocking, asking what happened. Some were shocked. Others had suspected it for years. A few admitted they'd stayed quiet, scared of fines, or worse. I threw a barbecue that weekend, no speeches, just burgers and a big sign. NO-HOA. People laughed, relaxed, and talked like neighbors again. Deborah took a plea. Community service, restitution, and a 5-year ban from housing boards. Larry got probation and anger management. The office became a pet salon, paws tails, and I gave them a rent discount. Kids played in yards again. One guy parked his taco truck in his driveway, and nobody cared. My truck stayed out front every night. But it didn't end there. A week after the barbecue, Sarah called while I was knee-deep in drywall. "The county financial crimes unit wants you," she said. This wasn't just Willow Creek. Deborah and Larry were tied to 3 other fake HOAs across the county. I set down my tools. "How deep does this go?" "Deep," she said. "They think she's been at it for years." And not alone. I dug out my folder of EVY Denke and found a landscaping fee notice with a P.O. box in another town. I checked it online, registered to a shell company, Greenway CIVYC LLC, with Larry as the agent. I called Sarah. By Tuesday, the DA had subpoenaed Greenway's records. They found $200,000 funneled through accounts over 5 years, all from small compliance fees paid by residents like me. Sarah called again. "This isn't just a scam. It's a county-wide fraud ring." The local paper ran a front-page story. Fake HOAs linked to fraud ring. Deborah's mugshot stared out, alongside Larry's and 2 Othursa, former title processor, and a landscaper with no crew. Then Tom showed up at my door with an envelope. Inside was a letter from 6 months ago from the Willow Creek Beautification Committee, threatening a lien on his house for shade tree violations. "I paid $400, he admitted. "My wife was sick. I couldn't deal with it." The letter had the same P.O. box. "You're not alone," I said. "But it's over." Word spread. Other neighborhoods reached out, sharing stories of fake fines and threats. I spoke at a town hall in Pine VYEW, where a similar HOA was charging pest control fees. A woman with a toddler told me they'd threatened her house over a storm door. This wasn't just about money, it was about fear. The county froze Greenway's assets, including Deborah's condo. Larry claimed he was a volunteer, but records showed he'd pocketed consulting fees. A retired zoning officer, Gerald Voss, spilled emails where Deborah bragged about her HOA hustle. The case went to the state attorney general. Then came a bombshell. A ledger was found behind a false wall in the old HOA office, uncovered when the pet salon was mounting shelves. Over 100 handwritten pages listed names, parcel numbers, and payments. Some entries had initials tied to code enforcement officers and realtors feeding Deborah data on vulnerable homes, widows, elderly folks, people who didn't use email. My stomach churned when I saw two addresses I knew. One was Mr. Ellis, who died last year. His house was bought by the HOA. The other was Ms. Clara, who'd supposedly moved to Florida. Turns out, she was in Idaho, levying in her niece's garage, scared she'd lose her home over fake dues. Sarah showed me a ledger page labeled Priority Targets, Quiet Acquisitions. It listed foreclosure timelines and notes like no family. They weren't just faking HOA, they were stealing homes. A search of Larry's storage unit uncovered hard drives with hours of audio. Deborah, Larry, and two others plotted to clear out undesirables and streamline acquisitions. It was cold, calculated property theft. I testified at a grand jury, laying out the fines, threats, and vandalism. A juror asked why I didn't move. If I did, I said, they'd just target the next person who couldn't fight. 9 indictments followed. Deborah faced conspiracy, elder abuse, and racketeering. Larry got wire fraud. The others, a property manager and a former clerk, were charged for forging titles and leaking tax data. The feds took over. The neighborhood changed. A new, voluntary Willow Creek CIVYC association formed, led by a schoolteacher, Mia, who organized cleanups but wanted no power. The pet salon threw a block party, and a legal aid nonprofit I'd given space to expanded, helping residents like Ms. Clara reclaim their homes. I sent my crew to fix her house, no charge. A real estate investor offered to buy the strip mall for $60 fan tram over my price, saying the story made it famous. I turned him down. That space wasn't for people like Deborah. Instead, I gave more of it to the nonprofit. Every Thursday, an attorney sat there, helping homeowners fight fake HOAs. 2 months later, Willow Creek felt alive. Lawns had weeds, kids drew on sidewalks, and jazz played from someone's porch. Tom built a bench under an oak tree, carved VYing into it. Quiet doesn't mean powerless. On the anniversary of that first fake notice, I stood on my porch, watching a kid bike by with cards and spokes. No one taped anything to my mailbox. No one called themselves president. My truck sat out front, right where it belonged. What do you think? Did I go too far buying their office? Or was it the only way to stop them? Should I have sold the strip mall for a profit? Or was keeping it for the community the right call? Have you ever faced a bully like Deborah? And how'd you handle it? Drop your thoughts below, hit that like button if you're with me, and subscribe for more stories that'll make you cheer for justice.